Every year, as the leaves wither into gold and the air thickens with the scent of memory, something stirs within you. You call it nostalgia, but it is not merely that it is an invocation. Around the time, families gather and tables fill with rituals of gratitude. The empath feels an older presence, arriving unannounced. It is the inner child, returning like a ghost who still believes the world can love without conditions. The season of gratitude summons what is unhealed. What you think of as warmth and reunion is also a summoning of archetypes, the mother, the father, the child, all seated invisibly among the guests. You may smile, you may serve, but a part of you regresses into that small, watchful being who once learned to read the emotional weather of the room before daring to speak. This return is not regression in the pathological sense. It is an echo of the psyche's cyclical nature. The soul remembers through repetition. Holidays are the psychic theater where the collective unconscious replays the myths of belonging and exile. The empath, more than anyone, becomes the vessel of these invisible repetitions. You feel what others suppress. You sense the cold between words, the tremor behind laughter. While others eat, you commune with ghosts, the unresolved grief of generations, the ancestral shame wrapped in polite conversation. You are not weak for this sensitivity. You are the instrument through which the unconscious seeks expression. Yet, to survive, you must learn that feeling everything is not the same as healing everything. When I speak of the inner child, I do not mean the sentimental image of innocence, but the autonomous psychic fragment that carries the original experience of love and rejection. It is an archetypal figure, the eternal child, the puer eternus. In mythology, this figure appears as a divine youth, forever pure, forever wounded, forever expecting redemption from the outer world. The empath's inner child is especially potent because it was forged not in overt trauma, but in subtle emotional attunement. You learned early that peace depended on your ability to absorb others' pain. Your gift of empathy was your survival strategy. You read every sigh as scripture, every silence as warning, and now, years later, every Thanksgiving, that part of you awakens, expecting to perform the same miracle, keeping harmony by disappearing into everyone else's feelings. What you call holiday exhaustion is often the psyche's protest against this unconscious contract. The inner child does not wish to perform anymore. It longs to be seen. It wants to eat at the table as itself, not as the emotional caretaker, but the family system resists such change, for every clan maintains equilibrium through roles: the silent one, the helper, the mediator, the scapegoat. These are not mere behaviors. They are archetypal masks worn to preserve the illusion of unity. The empath's mask is compassion, but beneath it hides grief, the sorrow of never having been loved without usefulness. The psyche, however, is merciful. It repeats not to punish, but to awaken. Each Thanksgiving becomes an initiation, if you can remain conscious. Watch yourself as you return to the familiar table. Feel how your body remembers its posture, the slight tension in your shoulders. The anticipatory smile, this is the body's archive of history. In that tension lives the unspoken fear. If I stop caring, will they still love me? The moment you witness that thought, without acting from it, the child begins to mature. The empath's evolution lies in differentiation, not in closing the heart, but in learning that compassion does not require self-erasure. True empathy recognizes boundaries as sacred containers through which love can flow without dissolution. You may wonder why the soul chooses such lessons through family gatherings, because the family is the first temple of the psyche. There, every god and demon you will ever meet first appeared in human form. The forgiving father, or the distant one, the nurturing mother, or the controlling one. These images shape the architecture of your inner world. When you return home, you do not merely visit relatives, you revisit your myth. Each person at the table mirrors a facet of your unconscious drama. To the unawakened, it feels like irritation or guilt. To the conscious, it becomes revelation. The empath perceives this more acutely, for you live between worlds, the visible and the psychic, the spoken and the energetic. You are the bridge through which the family's unspoken emotions seek release. But remember, every bridge must have firm ground on both sides. If you remain only the conduit, you will drown in others' currents. The task, then, is integration. To integrate is to hold paradox, to love them and let them be strangers to your new self, to honor the child who felt too much and teach it that safety no longer depends on vigilance. This inner dialogue is the true thanksgiving, the feast of reconciliation within the psyche. Gratitude, in its highest form, is not saying thank you for pleasant things, but recognizing how even pain has served your individuation. The empath often confuses unity with fusion. You think merging with another's emotion equals intimacy. But fusion is the death of the self, individuation. The central process of psychological growth demands separation before union. Just as the seed must split from the fruit to grow, the soul must differentiate from the collective to awaken. During family gatherings, the unconscious tries to pull you back into fusion, to test whether your new consciousness can stand amidst old energies. If you regress, do not despair. Regression is the spiral movement of growth. Each time the child returns, it brings a chance for deeper compassion for yourself. First, observe the dreams that visit you during this season. They will not be random. The unconscious speaks through symbols of the feast, a table too large, food that never satisfies, a house without doors. These are messages from the inner child about boundaries and belonging. Perhaps you dream of being late to dinner, unable to find your seat. The dream says your soul no longer fits the old configuration. Or you dream of cooking for everyone, but never eating yourself. That is the archetype of the wounded nurturer. Dreams are the psyche's secret. Thanksgiving, where the soul serves truths that the waking mind cannot digest. There is also an ancestral dimension. Many empaths carry what I call transgenerational emotion feelings, inherited, not experienced. Around Thanksgiving, when collective rituals honor lineage, these emotions rise from the depths. You may find yourself weeping for no personal reason, or feeling a heaviness that seems older than you. That is the blood memory seeking consciousness. The child within you becomes the mouthpiece for your lineage's silence. Healing it requires acknowledgement, not analysis. You cannot rationalize ancestral grief. You can only witness it with reverence. Light a candle. Speak their names. Thank the forgotten ones for surviving enough to give you life. This act frees both them and you. In the mystic language of the psyche, Thanksgiving is not merely a holiday, it is a rite of the harvest of awareness. What you reap is what you have sown in your unconscious fields. If you have planted self-betrayal, you harvest exhaustion. If you have planted boundaries, you reap peace. The empath's task is to discern which emotions are yours and which belong to the ancestral soil. That discernment is the birth of sovereignty for the inner child. This is the moment of awakening, realizing that love need not be earned by carrying the weight of everyone else's emotions, and yet do not exile the part of you that still wants to make everyone happy. That longing is holy in its origin. It is the soul's memory of divine unity. But it must be purified of fear. Love that arises from fear of abandonment is not love, it is servitude. When you feel compelled to soothe others, pause and ask, am I acting from love or from the child's terror of disapproval? Such awareness transforms compulsion into choice. In that moment, the empath becomes the alchemist of emotion, turning inherited pain into conscious compassion. There is something profound in the way the psyche chooses to repeat its wounds through ritualized moments. Every Thanksgiving, as the same dishes are prepared, as the same prayers are said, as the same chairs creak beneath the same bodies, you are not simply witnessing tradition, you are standing at the crossroads of time. The table becomes an altar of remembrance. Around it, generations gather, both living and dead. The empath, by nature of sensitivity, feels the weight of all that has ever been unsaid. You may not see it, but your body feels the ghost sitting silently beside you. They are not merely ancestors, they are former versions of yourself, each one carrying an emotion you once buried so you could survive. You notice small details others ignore. The fleeting glance between two people who haven't spoken truth in years, the tremor in a mother's voice when she says everything is fine, the way laughter turns brittle when the past is mentioned. These are psychic signals, frequencies of unresolved emotion. The empath's gift is perception, but that gift turns to torment when one cannot discern self from other. You believe you are feeling for them, but in truth, you are remembering yourself. Every vibration you detect is a mirror of your own forgotten wound. The uncle's cynicism, the sister's exhaustion, the mother's need to please, they are fragments of the same psyche. You are not separate. You are the dreamer in a dream populated by your inner archetypes wearing familiar faces. It is not by accident that such reunions happen near the end of the year, when the light wanes and the earth sleeps. Nature itself draws inward, and so does the soul. The psyche seeks to harvest what has ripened in the unconscious. For the empath, this means the emotions long left unexpressed begin to surface, seeking integration, but you have been trained to suppress rather than confront. You smile to keep peace, to preserve the illusion of warmth, yet every time you silence your truth, the inner child watches. It learns again that love costs authenticity. That small one within you is ancient. It is the original witness of your psyche's first disillusionment. The moment you realized that love could be withdrawn, that presence could vanish, this realization split the psyche. One part remained outward, adaptive, attuned to others. Another went inward, into exile. And so the empath grew, not through self-knowledge, but through survival. Every act of kindness was a code for safety. Every intuition was a defense mechanism wrapped in light. But I tell you now, the psyche does not heal through denial of its darkness. It heals through the sacred act of recognition. To recognize means literally to know again. When the inner child returns each Thanksgiving, it is not coming to haunt you, but to be known again, to be welcomed home as part of the whole. This is the mystery of individuation, the journey toward wholeness that demands you embrace what was once banished. You may feel resistance to this process. The ego prefers familiarity to truth. It says, I'm fine, even as the stomach tightens, even as dreams grow restless. But the unconscious does not obey words. It obeys symbols. If you will not speak the truth consciously, the body will express it through fatigue, anxiety, or tears. You cannot explain. The empath's exhaustion after family gatherings is often not from too much emotion, but from too little authenticity. The psyche expends immense energy maintaining illusions. Every false smile is a psychic debt. Listen, then, with more than ears, the next time you sit in that sacred circle of family, feel how your soul vibrates beneath the surface. Do not rush to interpret or to fix. Observe. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Thanksgiving is your yearly chance to make the unconscious conscious, to see the pattern in its costume of normality. Consider the symbol of the feast itself. Food, in dream language, represents assimilation. What we take in, what we make part of ourselves. To eat together is to share essence. Yet how often have you eaten while feeling emotionally starved? The empath serves others, making sure every plate is full, every conflict diffused, every silence softened. But afterward, you feel hollow. Why? Because what you offered was not born of overflow but of depletion. You gave without receiving. You became the sacrificial dish on the table of love. True gratitude is not the denial of hunger. It is the acknowledgement of nourishment. To be truly thankful is to recognize what has fed your growth, even the pain, even the abandonment. When you can thank the wound for what it taught you, the inner child transforms from victim to sage, its eyes once filled with fear, to begin to reflect wisdom. It learns that safety lies not in controlling others' moods, but in grounding in one's own center. In dream work, the appearance of the child signals new potential. The psyche presents it when something fresh seeks birth in consciousness. Each Thanksgiving, as the child returns, ask, what within me is ready to be reborn? Perhaps it is the capacity to say no without guilt, or to sit in silence without rescuing, or to love without losing yourself. These are not small acts, they are revolutions of the soul. The empath initiation is not into sainthood, but sovereignty. You must reclaim your inner authority over your emotional field. That means understanding that empathy without discernment becomes possession. The unconscious does not differentiate between inner and outer when boundaries dissolve. You become what you absorb. Thus, the empath must learn containment, not walls of indifference, but vessels of awareness. Imagine yourself as a chalice, open, receptive, but not leaking into the sacred container. You can receive the emotions of others without identifying with them. You witness, you understand, and then you let go. That is conscious empathy. The child within has never known such containment. It knew only flooding. So when it returns, it brings waves of old feeling, tears, confusion, tenderness. Welcome these as sacred visitors. Do not banish them with shame. The psyche does not punish, it purifies. You are being invited to reparent the child, to offer what no one could before, presence without condition. Speak softly within. You no longer have to earn love. You are safe even if they misunderstand you. Such words are not affirmations. They are incantations that reshape the unconscious landscape. In time, you will notice a shift. The family no longer triggers you as before. Their words still carry the same patterns, but your body remains still. This is not detachment, it is mastery. You have moved from resonance to awareness. Where once you felt responsible for everyone's emotion, you now feel compassion without confusion. That is the fruit of individuation. Do not expect others to understand this transformation. The empath's awakening often threatens the system it once served. When you stop absorbing pain, others must finally meet their own. You will be accused of coldness, distance, arrogance, but the soul that knows its center cannot be manipulated by guilt. Hold firm. The child within you has waited lifetimes for this moment of protection. And if loneliness arises, know that solitude is the sacred womb of rebirth. Many mistake it for exile, but it is gestation. In that quiet, the empath's gift becomes refined. You begin to sense not only others' emotions, but also the divine intelligence weaving through them. You perceive that every pain holds purpose. Every conflict hides a hidden unity. The empath, once the servant of emotions, becomes the interpreter of symbols, the alchemist who sees light even in shadow. When you reach this stage, Thanksgiving transforms. It is no longer a test of endurance, but a ritual of consciousness. You see your family not as the source of pain, but as actors in your soul's theater, each one playing their part to awaken you. Gratitude deepens into grace. You can sit among them, feeling both love and distance, both connection and autonomy. The child within smiles, not because everything is healed, but because everything is finally seen. The more deeply you awaken, the more you begin to sense that what returns every Thanksgiving is not just your inner child, it is your myth. The psyche does not speak in linear time, it speaks in circles. What feels like repetition is actually a spiral. You return to the same table, to the same faces, to the same emotional stage, but each time from a slightly higher vantage point, from above, the pattern begins to reveal its hidden geometry, the way love and pain have always danced together to forge your soul's maturity. In earlier years, you were caught in the drama, lost inside the play. You mistook the roles for truth, the martyr, the peacemaker, the caretaker, but now awareness stands beside you as a silent witness. You see how the empath's compulsion to heal everyone was never selfless, it was a prayer for safety. The child believed, if I can make them happy, I will be allowed to exist. Yet the universe never asks you to earn existence. It asks you to remember it. That memory, the soul's first truth, is what stirs each holiday. The scent of roasted food, the hum of conversation, the flicker of candles, all these are keys that unlock doors within the unconscious. You are drawn back to where it all began, not to suffer again, but to reclaim the fragments of yourself that were left behind in those rooms of survival. The psyche orchestrates this return not as punishment, but as retrieval. The empath must walk back into the fire to rescue what was lost in the flames of childhood adaptation. Every family gathering is a psychological seance. The dead are not gone. They live through patterns. When you hear your mother's tone in your own voice, or repeat the same apology your father used to give, you are communing with ghosts. They are not malicious, they are unfinished. They yearn for release, for someone conscious enough to end the cycle. And because you are the empath, you have been chosen as the vessel of redemption. But redemption does not mean fixing others. It means transmuting the energy within yourself. When you sit at the table and feel the same tightness in your chest that you felt at age 7, breathe into it. That sensation is the threshold between conscious and unconscious. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Do not escape it with small talk or distractions. Stay. Listen to what the tension says. Perhaps it whispers, I'm tired of pretending. Perhaps it says, I miss being loved for no reason. These are the prayers of your soul. when you hear them without judgment, you are performing inner alchemy. True alchemy is not turning lead into gold, it is turning unconsciousness into light. The empath gift, once refined, becomes this sacred fire. You begin to see that feeling deeply is not a curse, it is initiation. But you must allow feeling to complete its cycle. When you suppress emotion, it becomes shadow. When you face it, it becomes wisdom. Shadow is simply emotion frozen in fear. Awareness is the flame that melts it back into flow. The empath's journey, therefore, is the story of thawing. Your task is not to transcend sensitivity, but to let it mature. Immature empathy is absorption. Mature empathy is radiance. One consumes energy, the other generates it. When the inner child merges with the adult self, sensitivity becomes strength. You no longer absorb the emotions of others, you illuminate them. The same intuition that once drained you now guides you. You may notice during such awakenings that your dreams shift. Where once you dreamt of chaotic gatherings, you now dream of open spaces, fields, oceans, skies. These are symbols of psychic expansion. The soul is no longer trapped in ancestral rooms, yet sometimes the child still appears, perhaps wandering through an old house, holding a candle. That candle is your consciousness searching for every lost fragment of itself. Approach the dream child with reverence. Ask it what it needs. Often it will not answer in words, but in gestures, a hug, a look, a door opening. Dreams speak through images because the soul's language predates speech. There comes a moment when you realize that your empathy was never truly about others. It was a mirror of your longing for God, the archetype of the ultimate other. To feel deeply is to seek the divine in everything, but when that longing is distorted by fear, it becomes codependency. When purified by awareness, it becomes compassion. The mystics of every age knew this. They, too, felt the suffering of the world as their own, but they did not drown in it. They burned with it. And through that fire, they saw God. You might wonder then what it means to truly heal the empathic wound. It is not to stop feeling, it is to feel with presence. The difference is everything. Presence is the container through which the divine moves without distortion. When you remain grounded in awareness, the emotions of others pass through you like wind through an open window, refreshing, not exhausting. The empath becomes a priest of emotion, translating pain into understanding. In this sense, Thanksgiving becomes your temple. Every conversation becomes a liturgy of self-observation. The way your heart reacts, the subtle tightening when someone dismisses you, the warmth when someone sees you all, these are opportunities for deeper knowing. Consciousness grows not by escaping discomfort, but by integrating it. When you sit at that table, know that you are not just a participant. You are a witness of the eternal dance between love and shadow. At times, this awareness can feel lonely. Others may not understand the inner work you are doing. They may still play out their unconscious scripts, unaware of the divine theater unfolding. But solitude is the cost of clarity. To awaken is to step out of the collective trance. You will love them still, but from a new dimension. The empath's love, once a plea for belonging, becomes a silent blessing that asks for nothing in return. There is a sacred paradox in all this. The more individuated you become, the more connected you feel. When you are no longer entangled, you finally sense the unity behind all separateness. It is like stepping back from a painting. What once looked chaotic now reveals pattern and beauty. You understand that each family member's wound served a purpose in your evolution. The critic forged your boundaries. The absent one taught you presence. The one who could not love showed you the necessity of self-love. In seeing this, resentment dissolve. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering without poison. The empath's inner child, now embraced, becomes your guide. It teaches you to play again, to rest, to trust the flow of life. It reminds you that not everything must be fixed. Some things must simply be felt. That small, luminous being who once trembled at the dinner table now walks beside you, laughing, unafraid. You realize that healing was never about changing others, but about returning to wholeness within. So, when Thanksgiving comes again, and the scent of memory fills the air, do not brace yourself. Welcome the child who returns. Prepare a place at the table for them, not among your relatives, but within your heart. Let them eat, let them speak, let them be seen. For when you honor that child, you honor the soul's eternal renewal. You will discover that gratitude, in its truest form, is not for what has been given, but for what has been reclaimed. This is the great mystery. Every empathic wound hides divine inheritance, sensitivity. Once your burden becomes your compass. Where once you felt pain, you now feel guidance. The same heart that once broke under the weight of others now expands to contain the universe. And in that expansion, you finally understand what it means to give thanks not as ritual, but as revelation. There is a sacred stillness that comes when the empath finally understands that the purpose of feeling was never to drown in emotion, but to perceive its divine intelligence. Every sensation, every ache, every wave of sadness that arises around the family table has always been a messenger, carrying the same simple truth. You are the awareness, not the wound. The child within you did not know this. It believed that to survive, it must feel everything, hold everything, heal everyone. But the awakened empath, the one who has walked through cycles of return, knows now that to feel does not mean to carry. This is the final alchemy of the soul, to witness without attachment, to love without losing form. Thanksgiving, in its mystical dimension, becomes the symbol of this final integration. The harvest of wisdom from the fields of pain. The empath who once entered the room scanning for danger now enters as light, as presence, as consciousness clothed in compassion. The same energies that once overwhelmed you now move through you like music through an instrument tuned by years of surrender. You begin to notice subtle changes. Where there used to be reaction, there is now response. The voice that once trembled while saying, "I'm fine now," says quietly, "That doesn't feel right to me." Without guilt, the shoulders that once carried ancestral tension now rest in the natural dignity of self-possession. This is not defiance, it is alignment. The empath nervous system, long trained to contract, begins to open. The child, once trapped in vigilance, now breathes through you, and yet the world remains the same. The family still speaks in familiar tones. The same jokes resurface, the same awkward silences, but something invisible has shifted. You are no longer inside the pattern, you are observing it from the mountain of awareness. This distance is not coldness, it is freedom. You realize that love without boundaries is chaos, and boundaries without love are prisons. The true soul lives between them, open yet sovereign, feeling yet free. There is a profound mystery in this realization. For all your life, you believed the inner child was a fragment in need of healing. But as your awareness deepens, you begin to see that the child was never broken. It was divine innocence misplaced in a world that did not know how to hold it. Its return, each Thanksgiving, was not regression, it was resurrection. The psyche calls back what the world forced underground. The empath's task is to bring heaven back into the body, to restore the forgotten holiness of sensitivity. When you see your family now, you do not merely see people, you see archetypes, living symbols of consciousness at play. The father becomes not only a man, but the archetype of authority. The mother becomes not only a woman, but the archetype of nurturance. The siblings become reflections of your inner polarities, competition and connection, love and resentment. You begin to understand that these external figures were never separate from your psychic architecture. They were mirrors through which the self learned to know itself. It is no accident that you were born into this particular family constellation. The soul, before incarnation, chooses the perfect pattern of mirrors through which to remember its light. The empath family is rarely easy, because ease does not awaken consciousness. It is tension that creates awareness. It is conflict that reveals the opposites within. Thanksgiving, therefore, is a sacred stage upon which the alchemical marriage of opposites unfolds, light and shadow, child and adult, self and other. Do not mistake this process for perfection. Wholeness is not purity, it is inclusivity. The light that denies shadow becomes brittle. The shadow that forgets light becomes despair. The goal is not to eliminate conflict, but to contain it within the vastness of consciousness. This is the mystery of the self, the totality that embraces all contradictions. The empath, through awareness, becomes the vessel of that totality. Sometimes, after such inner revelations, you may feel a strange emptiness. Do not fear it. It is not loss, it is spaciousness. The psyche is clearing the room where once the noise of other people's emotions filled every corner. Into that silence, something ancient and vast begins to whisper. It is not a thought, it is a knowing. It says, "You have always been whole." This is the voice of the self, the center around which all your archetypes revolve. It is older than time, and yet it speaks through the smallest gestures, the breath, the heartbeat, the pause, before you respond. When you rest in that center, the empath's sensitivity transforms from reaction to revelation. You no longer absorb the emotions of others. You perceive their symbolic meaning. You see that anger is unmet truth. Sadness is love with nowhere to go. Control is fear wearing armor. You no longer fight these energies. You translate them into consciousness. In that moment, the empath becomes a mystic. You are no longer a mirror. You are light itself. You realize that your family, your ancestors, your inner child, all were instruments in the divine symphony of awakening. Every tear shed at those gatherings was water for the garden of the soul. Every silence was the space through which grace entered. Every misunderstanding was an initiation into the art of compassion. As the meal ends and the candles burn low, you find yourself looking around the table with new eyes. You see the aging hands, the tired smiles, the quiet gestures of love that words could never carry. You feel gratitude, not as a thought, but as a vibration moving through your being. Gratitude for the lessons, for the patterns, for the sacred comedy of it all. You realize that your task was never to fix your family, but to awaken within it, to bring consciousness into the ancestral field so that those who came before can finally rest. And those who come after can breathe freely. This is the hidden meaning of the empath sensitivity. You were not meant to carry pain, you were meant to transform it. You are the end of a lineage of silent feelers, the one who turns emotion into awareness, and in doing so, you fulfill the archetype of the healer. Not the healer who cures, but the healer who beholds. For to behold is to bless. When you leave that night, stepping into the cold November air, you might feel a quiet peace rising within you. The stars above seem nearer, as if the heavens themselves lean closer in recognition. The child within you walks beside you, hand in hand, not behind you as a shadow, but beside you as light. Together, you walk home not to escape the past, but to embody it in wholeness. You understand now that every Thanksgiving will return, but it will never repeat, for the spiral of consciousness always moves forward. Each year, the child returns less wounded, more luminous, until one day there is no return at all, only presence. The feast becomes eternal, not bound to a day or tradition, but alive in every breath of gratitude. And so the empath's journey concludes not with escape, but with embodiment. You are no longer the one who absorbs the pain of the world, you are the one who transforms it into love. Your inner child no longer hides at the table. It sits in the center of your being, radiant, fearless, whole. The same world remains, yet you perceive it through the eyes of the self-eyes that see no separation, no hierarchy of feeling, only the divine play of consciousness unfolding through the tender miracle of being human. This is the final Thanksgiving, the one that requires no calendar, no family, no feast. It is the soul's eternal